I still remember the sharp click of the pen cap, like a lock snapping shut forever. She called me worthless right at the dinner table, smiling like I deserved it. Last night, I signed a document nobody imagined I would dare to touch. By morning, my daughter was calling me non-stop. You will not guess what I finally gave her until you understand exactly how I was turned into nothing more than a breathing wallet. The rain outside the window was not just falling, it was hammering against the plate glass, blurring the grey outline of the lake into a smear of charcoal and slate. The office on the second floor smelled of stale roasted coffee and the sharp, chemical tang of fresh printer ink. In my hand, the black ballpoint pen felt heavier than a shovel. It was just a piece of plastic and metal, yet it felt like a weapon I was afraid to fire. My name is Marianne Voss. I am 57 years old. For 22 years, I worked as an operations manager at North Bay Compliance Solutions, checking boxes and ensuring other people followed the rules. I am a widow who knows exactly how many cents are in a gallon of milk and how long a winter coat can last before the lining shreds. I have lived a life of discipline. I have lived a life of quiet subtraction, taking pieces of myself away so my daughter could have more. I drove a car that rattled when it went over 40 miles per hour so she could drive a sedan with heated seats. I ate leftovers for 3 days straight so she could have a meal plan. But sitting here in this leather chair, the math finally changed. Marianne, the woman across the desk said softly. She tapped a perfectly manicured fingernail on the document. Are you sure? Once we file this, the county clerk records it by Monday. There is no undo button. My phone buzzed against the mahogany tabletop. It vibrated aggressively, sliding an inch to the left, near my elbow. The screen lit up with a high-resolution photo of a smiling blonde woman. Lila. It was her 5th call in 10 minutes. I watched the phone dance and buzz until the screen went black again. I did not reach for it. My hands were folded in my lap, gripping each other to stop the shaking. I am sure, I said, my voice steadier than my hands. I just need to make one call when we are done. The lawyer raised an eyebrow, likely wondering why a mother would ignore her child while legally dismantling her legacy. But I did not explain. I did not tell her that I had 4 specific words waiting in my throat. 4 words that would silence the frantic ringing of that phone forever. 12 days ago, I did not know I was capable of this. 12 days ago, I was standing in a converted industrial loft in downtown Chicago, feeling like an intruder in my own life. The air conditioner was blasting, but I was sweating. My navy blue dress was a size too small, cutting into my waist. A relic from 5 years ago, because I had not bought new formal wear since my husband's funeral. My fingers were trembling, not from nerves, but from exhaustion. I had pulled a double shift on Saturday and Sunday just to clear my schedule for this engagement party. Clutched in my sweaty palm was a thick cream envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $5,000. It was not a fortune to the people in this room, who wore watches worth more than my car, but it was everything I had left. That was my emergency fund. That was the money for the hip surgery I knew I would need in 2 years. I had drained it to give Lila a wedding gift that would not embarrass her. Marianne. Lila's voice sliced through the ambient jazz music. She floated toward me, holding a champagne flute. She looked radiant, polished, and expensive. A man followed her. He was tall, with teeth that were too white and a suit that fit too perfectly. This is Gavin, Lila said, hooking her arm through his. And this, She gestured to a shorter, balding man standing near the bar. "Is Marcus. He is a key investor in Gavin's development firm." The man named Marcus turned. He did not look at my face. He looked at my shoes, then my dress, and then he seemed to look right through me, as if calculating my depreciation value. It was the way a butcher looks at a side of beef, estimating the yield. "It is nice to meet you, Mrs. Voss," Gavin said, offering a hand that felt like cold marble. Lila laughed, a tinkling sound that felt practiced and hollow. "Oh, stop being so formal. Gavin, Marianne is fine." "Right, Marianne." The air left my lungs. She had not called me Mom, not once since I walked in the door, in front of these people, in this loft with exposed brick and abstract art. I was not her mother. I was Marianne. I was just another guest, and a poorly dressed one at that. The memory burned hot in my chest, drying up the damp chill of the law office. I looked at the legal document again. The clauses were dense, the paragraphs long and winding, but I knew exactly what they meant. I looked at the phone, which had started to buzz again. Lila calling. "I am ready," I whispered. I pressed the tip of the pen to the signature line. The ink flowed black and permanent. With one stroke, I stopped being a mother who would set herself on fire to keep her child warm. I became something else entirely. The pen scratched against the paper. A harsh, final sound. Robert did not leave me a fortune. He left me a stack of medical bills from the 3 days he spent in the ICU after the scaffolding collapsed. And he left me Lila, who was only 6 years old. I remember standing at his grave, the grass already turning brown in the November chill, promising him that our daughter would never know the panic of an empty refrigerator. I kept that promise. I worked days at the compliance firm and nights processing data entry until my eyes felt like they were filled with sand. I paid off the hospital debt dollar by dollar. I put Lila through a private university without her ever having to fill out a loan application. I thought I was buying her freedom, but I was actually buying her resentment. Lila did not grow up wanting to be happy. She grew up wanting to be enviable. Somewhere between her sophomore year of college and her first job at a boutique marketing firm, she stopped looking at the world as a place to live and started seeing it as a backdrop for a photo. She became obsessed with personal branding. Every coffee she drank, every sunset she watched, it all had to be curated. She spoke in buzzwords that made my head spin: aesthetic, engagement, optics. She was ashamed of our small ranch house with the siding that needed power washing. She wanted a life that looked like a magazine spread, and I was the smudge on the glossy page. My body began to send me the bill for all those double shifts. My knees throbbed when it rained, a deep, grinding ache that made walking downstairs an ordeal. My blood pressure crept up until the doctor put me on medication that made me dizzy if I stood up too fast. But I learned quickly not to mention it. "Mum, please," Lila would say, scrolling through her phone without looking at me. "You are being so toxic. Why do you always focus on the pain you have to manifest wellness? You are bringing down the vibe." It was a slow erosion. At first, she just rolled her eyes. Then, she started treating my sacrifices as baseline expectations. If I cooked dinner, she complained about the carbs. If I drove her to the airport at 4 a.m, she complained about the car smelling like old upholstery. My love became a utility to her, like tap water or electricity. You only notice it when it stops working. She did not care about my savings account, which was modest. She cared about the one thing I actually owned. When Robert's parents passed, They left us the only thing: they had a drafty cabin and 32 acres of dense forest land 2 hours north of the city. For years, it was worth almost nothing. It was just trees, mosquitoes, and mud. But then the city started expanding. The wealthy needed second homes. Developers began eyeing the lake nearby. Suddenly, my 32 acres of silence were worth a conversation. Lila brought it up constantly. It started as gentle suggestions. "You know," she said one evening, sipping a green juice that cost more than my hourly wage in the 90s. "Gavin says that market is peaking. If you sold the land now, you could move into one of those assisted living condos downtown. It would be so much easier for everyone." "I am 57. Lila," I said, scrubbing a pot in the sink. "I am not ready for assisted living. And your father loved those woods. Dad is dead." "Marianne," she snapped, her voice sharp. "And that land is just sitting there. It is a wasted asset. It is selfish to hoard it when it could actually help us. Help you live better." She sounded like she was talking about liquidating old furniture, not the place where her father taught her to fish. She did not know that years ago. A colleague in the legal department at my old job had advised me to protect the property. He had drafted some papers, a trust or a restrictive covenant. I could not quite remember the legal term. I had signed them, filed them, and then life happened. I forgot the specifics. I kept the paperwork in a battered metal box on the top shelf of my closet. It smelled of lavender sachets and old dust. Inside, there were letters Robert wrote to me when we were dating, his death certificate, and a Polaroid of the two of us standing in front of the cabin before Lila was born. In the photo, the trees behind us looked like a fortress, protecting us from the world. I never thought I would need protection from my own child. I never thought that the little girl I carried on my shoulders would look at my legacy and see only a wire transfer. But then came the engagement party. Then came the moment she decided that my history was just inventory for her future. She did not know about the metal box. She did not know that love, when pushed into a corner, can turn into something cold and hard. She only knew that she wanted the land, and she thought I was too weak to say no. She was about to learn that the woman who survived the death of a husband and 20 years of corporate invisible labor was not weak. She was just waiting. I tried to make myself small against the exposed brick wall of the loft, clutching my glass of sparkling water like a shield. The room buzzed with the hum of expensive conversation. Gavin's parents were on the other side of the room, holding court in cashmere and silk. They had looked at me once, offered a tight, pitying smile, and then turned back to their friends. To them, I was not the mother of the bride. I was a rustic accessory, a bit of authentic grit to add texture to their polished lives. I was close enough to hear a young man in a bespoke suit lean in toward Gavin. He held a whiskey glass loosely in one hand and gestured toward me with his chin. "So, the mother is sitting on 32 acres of prime woodland," the man asked, his voice carrying over the jazz music. "That definitely sweetens the deal." "Man, that is legitimate equity." I waited for Lila to correct him. I waited for her to say that I was not a deal sweetener, that I was her mother. Instead, she threw her head back and laughed, a bright, artificial sound that matched the sparkle of her diamond ring. "It is the only thing of value in that town," Lila said, linking her arm through Gavin's. "Trust me, we are going to upgrade it." My stomach twisted. She was using me as a credit score booster. She was selling me to these people to prove she brought something to the table besides her marketing degree. I felt the thick envelope in my purse, the $5,000 I had scraped together. It felt heavy and foolish now. Still, I took a breath and stepped forward, wanting to give it to her while I still had the courage. "Lila," I said, reaching for her hand. "I wanted to give you this now. It is just a little." She intercepted my hand before I could pull the envelope out. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her nails digging into my wrist. She steered me sharply away from the group, toward a decorative fern in the corner. "Mom! Stop!" she hissed, her smile never leaving her face for the benefit of the room. "What is that cash-a check? Just give it to me later. Do not hand me a crinkled envelope in front of Gavin's investors. It looks so desperate. Let me handle it so it is not embarrassing." I pulled my hand back, stinging. "I also prepared a toast," I said, my voice failing me. "For later. Just a few words about your father and no." She cut me off instantly. Her eyes were hard, devoid of any warmth. "Absolutely not. No speeches. You always get weepy and talk about the hard times. It brings the whole mood down. This is a celebration. Marianne. Not a therapy session. Just smile and eat the hors d'oeuvres." She spun around and walked back to the circle of light, leaving me standing in the shadows. I retreated to the buffet table, picking at a piece of artisanal cheese I could not swallow. From where I stood, I could hear her voice rising above the crowd. I essentially raised myself. Lila was saying to a group of women who nodded sympathetically. My childhood was all about survival. It gave me this hunger to succeed because I started with absolutely zero. I stared at her back. She was building her personal brand on a foundation of lies. She erased the nights I stayed up helping her with science projects. She erased the dance lessons I paid for by skipping lunch. She erased me. Gavin clapped his hands together, drawing the room's attention. "We are already looking at architectural plans," he announced, beaming. "We are thinking a boutique eco-resort. 32 acres of glamping pods, $400 a night. We clear the underbrush, pave a direct access road, and it is a gold mine." I stepped forward, unable to stop myself. "What about the old oak trees?" I asked. The room went quiet. "And the creek. If you pave a road, you will kill the drainage." Lila rolled her eyes. It was a theatrical, exaggerated motion that invited everyone else to share in her exasperation. "It is just dirt." "Marianne," she said, "nobody cares about the drainage." The drive back to my hotel later that night was suffocating. Lila drove her white luxury sedan, and I sat in the passenger seat, watching the city lights blur into streaks of red and yellow. The silence between us was not empty. It was heavy with things unsaid. Finally, she pulled up to the curb of the modest motel I had booked to save money. She did not unlock the doors. She kept her hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. "Why do you hold on to it?" she asked quietly. "The land," I asked. She turned to look at me. The street lamp outside cast half her face in shadow. "Yes, the land," she said, and her voice was devoid of anger, which made it terrifying. It was just cold, hard calculation. Gavin needs this project to secure his partnership. I need this to secure my place in that family. You are just sitting on it like a dragon in a cave. Honestly, Mom, what value does your life have anymore besides that deed? I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I did not know this woman at all. The lock clicked open. I stepped out into the cold night air, and for the first time, I felt the freezing temperature was warmer than the inside of that car. The next morning, the sunlight was harsh and unforgiving as I walked into the restaurant Lila had chosen. It was one of those places where the menu was printed on recycled hemp paper and the water cost more than gasoline. The walls were stark white, decorated only with hanging air plants that looked like green spiders. Lila was already seated, tapping furiously on her phone. She did not stand up to greet me. "I ordered for us," she said, not looking up. "You would not know what anything is anyway. I got you the deconstructed grain bowl with turmeric foam. It is good for your inflammation." I sat down, placing my handbag on the floor. "Thank you," I said quietly. She finally put the phone down, interlacing her fingers on the marble tabletop. Her eyes scanned me, starting from my hairline and moving down to my sensible shoes. It was not a look of affection. It was an audit. "Mom, we need to talk about your situation," she began, her voice low and serious. "I was looking at you last night. You look tired, and I do not mean just sleepy. I mean irrelevant." I blinked, the sting sudden and sharp. "Excuse me." "Look at your life, Marianne," she said, dropping the mom again. "Your friends are all retired secretaries who talk about coupons. You live in a house that is falling apart. You have no status, no network, no real assets besides what Dad left. You are just existing. Honestly, in terms of societal contribution, you are worthless." I felt the blood rush to my ears, a hot, roaring tide. My heart slammed against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that made my fingertips numb. I stared at the girl I had nursed through fevers, the girl whose tuition I had paid by wearing the same winter coat for 10 years. She sat there, glowing with health and cruelty, reducing my entire existence to a failed business metric. I wanted to scream, but my throat had clamped shut. I just sat there, silent, letting the word hang in the air between us like a guillotine blade. Lila did not seem to notice my silence, or perhaps she interpreted it as submission. She leaned forward, her voice shifting from critical to commanding. "That is why I am taking charge," she said. "I need the land deed. You need to sign the title over to me and Gavin before the wedding. It makes the portfolio cleaner for the bank." "The wedding is in 3 months," I managed to say, my voice sounding thin and foreign to my own ears. "We cannot wait that long," she snapped, her patience evaporating. "Gavin has partners lining up. There is a development window. If we miss it because you are dragging your feet, we lose the opportunity. They want to break ground in the spring." She was not my daughter in that moment. She was a negotiator closing a deal. "But that is my home," I whispered. "The cabin—" "Oh, stop it," she said, rolling her eyes. "You never go up there. You are just being selfish. I am trying to build a future, an empire, and you are standing in the way because of some sentimental nonsense. If you do not help me, you are sabotaging your own child. Do you want to be that kind of mother? The kind who ruins her daughter's success because she is jealous?" She reached into her designer tote bag and pulled out a sleek leather planner. "I booked a notary," she said, checking the page. "He is just 2 blocks away. We have an appointment at 2 o'clock. We can walk there right after we pay the bill." She had not asked. She had summoned me to sign away my life between a salad and a coffee. My phone buzzed on the table. I looked down, expecting another spam call. It was a message from Gavin. It popped up on the lock screen, a notification that froze the blood in my veins. He must have been trying to forward a file to his partner and clicked my name by mistake. It was a spreadsheet attachment. The subject line read, Project North Woods. Beneath it, the preview text was visible. Strategy buyout mother minimal cost basis. Relocation plan state facility. The room seemed to tilt. They were not just taking the land. They had a budget line for removing me. Minimal cost basis. I was a line item to be minimized. Lila was looking at her watch, oblivious. So, are we ready? We do not want to be late. I gripped the edge of the table. I could not sign. If I signed today, I was signing my own eviction notice from life. But I could not explode either. Not yet. I needed to get to that metal box in my closet. I needed to find the papers I had signed years ago. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead pipes. No, I said. Lila's jaw dropped. What did you say? I said no to the notary today, I said, my voice trembling but distinct. I need to review the paperwork myself. You are kidding me, she hissed, her face turning ugly with rage. You are going to embarrass me. Gavin is waiting for confirmation. Tell him to wait, I said. I picked up my bag. Give me 72 hours. Mom, she shouted as I turned away, causing heads to turn at the nearby tables. I walked out into the blinding street, the noise of the city washing over me, clutching my phone like a grenade I was waiting to throw. I had 72 hours to figure out if I was a mother or a casualty. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by piles of paper that smelled of old dust and betrayal. The silence in the house was heavy, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. I logged into the bank portal, my fingers stiff and cold. There it was, a withdrawal from 3 weeks ago, $2,500. The description read, Strategic Consulting. It was drawn from the joint account I had opened for Lila when she was a freshman in college, the one I kept active for emergencies. She had not used it for a medical bill or a flat tire. She used it to pay for the appraisal of my own house. She had known the exact square footage and zoning codes before she even sent me the invitation to the engagement party. I drove to North Bay Compliance Solutions because I did not know where else to go. I needed the routine, the safety of fluorescent lights and spreadsheets. But when I sat at my desk, the numbers swam before my eyes. I walked to the break room, feeling like a ghost haunting my own cubicle. I told my supervisor I had a family emergency, which was the truest lie I had ever told. As I packed my bag, Sarah, a senior auditor who had survived 3 mergers and 2 divorces, slid a business card across the laminate table. You look like you are about to walk into a buzzsaw. Marianne, Sarah said, her voice rough from 40 years of smoking. Call this man. He is expensive, but he eats sharks for breakfast. I took the card and walked out to the parking lot. I sat in my sedan, the one Lila hated because the paint was peeling on the hood. I placed my hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, staring at the cracked asphalt. I did not scream. I did not pound the dashboard. I just sat there, feeling a hollow space in my chest where my daughter used to be. It felt like someone had reached inside and pulled out my vital organs, leaving the skin intact. I pulled out my phone and did something I had never done. I guessed her password on the cloud drive we used to share for family photos. It was still her birthday. Inside a folder named Wedding Logistics, I found a draft. It was a prenuptial agreement between Lila and Gavin. I scrolled through the legalese until I found Clause 4B. If the asset, my land, was transferred prior to the marriage, it became the sole property of the marital trust, administered exclusively by Gavin Rourke. My heart hammered against my ribs. I dialed the number of an old neighbour who worked in the county zoning office. He had been a friend of Robert, my late husband, Marianne. "I cannot give you official details," he said, lowering his voice. "But, yes. An application was filed 4 days ago for a commercial variance on your lot. Is the applicant my daughter?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "No," he said. "It is an entity called Rourke Horizons, LLC. The signatory is Gavin Rourke." The phone felt cold against my ear. Lila was not the mastermind. She was the Trojan horse. If I signed that deed, I would cease to be a person of interest. I would become a legal obstruction. The notes about the minimal cost basis made sense now. They were not planning to care for me. They were planning to warehouse me in the cheapest facility they could find to clear the title. I drove home in a trance. I walked into the bedroom and reached for the top shelf of the closet. The metal box was cool to the touch. I opened it, bypassing the photos of Lila's first birthday, and pulled out a yellowed piece of notebook paper. It was the last note Robert wrote before he went to the hospital. "Promise me. Marianne." The letter read, "Don't let anyone turn our home into a commodity. It is where we built us." I closed the box. The click of the latch sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. They wanted a fight. They wanted to treat me like a liability. I looked at the lawyer's card in my hand. It was time to show them exactly how expensive a liability I could be. The office of Elaine Mercer was not located in a glass skyscraper downtown. It was tucked away in a brick building that smelled of old carpet, toner, and stale coffee. Elaine herself was a woman of sharp angles and even sharper eyes, sitting behind a desk submerged under towers of manila folders. She did not offer me sparkling water or a plush chair. She offered me silence and her full attention, which was worth far more. "So," Elaine said, adjusting her reading glasses as she scanned the documents I had brought. "Let me understand this clearly. They want you to sign a quitclaim deed before the wedding date. And this email here suggests they have already filed for a zoning variance." "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "They think I am just an old woman who does not understand what a zoning variance is." My phone buzzed on the edge of her desk. It had been vibrating every 3 minutes for the last hour. I glanced at the screen. It was Lila again. A stream of text messages cascaded down the glass. "Mom, stop being dramatic. You are ruining my life. You are not even using that land. You are just being spiteful. Honestly, what are you even living for if not to help me?" I turned the phone face down. Elaine watched me, her expression unreadable. "There is more," I said. I pulled up the email from Gavin that I had received in the parking lot. "Read this." Elaine took the phone. Her eyes narrowed as she read the polite, corporate language Gavin had used. "Dear Marianne." Elaine read aloud, her tone dry. "In the interest of streamlining our assets, we are prepared to offer you a one-time buyout of your residency rights. We can arrange a very comfortable studio apartment in the city for you." Elaine placed the phone back on the desk with a heavy thud. "He is trying to evict you from your own home," Elaine said bluntly. "He is framing it as a buyout, but legally, he is trying to sever your life estate. If you sign the deed without a reservation clause, he can kick you out the day after the wedding." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, despite the stuffy heat of the office. I knew it. I knew they viewed me as an obstacle. We have options, Elaine said, pulling a yellow legal pad toward her. We can set up a revocable trust, but that can be challenged. We can look into a conservation easement, or we can transfer the title into a foundation. But we have to be careful about the timing. If we move assets now, they might claim you are doing it under duress, or that you are not of sound mind. Sound mind? I asked. It is a common tactic in cases where the asset value is high, Elaine said, looking me dead in the eye. If you refuse to sign, and if they are as desperate as this email suggests, their next move will be to petition for emergency guardianship. They will claim you are confused, paranoid, or unable to manage your financial affairs. They will try to force the signature through a court order. The air left my lungs. My own daughter would declare me incompetent just to pave over my husband's memory. I need to stop them, I said. I need to make it impossible for them to touch it. Elaine started shuffling through the stack of old papers I had brought from my metal box. She stopped at a yellowed document near the bottom. It was the draft my old colleague had written up years ago, the one I had forgotten. Marianne, Elaine said, tapping the paper. Did you know you signed a codicil to your will 15 years ago? It references an intent to donate the land for environmental preservation. You never filed the final deed, but the intent is documented here. It is notarized. I forgot about that, I whispered. This is our weapon, Elaine said, a small, dangerous smile touching her lips. We do not just refuse to sign their deed. We execute the plan you started 15 years ago. We create an irrevocable conservation easement. It restricts the land use in perpetuity. No commercial development, no subdivision, no mortgages. The land remains forest forever. I looked at the window, where the grey light of the afternoon was fading. I thought about Lila's words. You are worthless. You are just an obstacle. If we do this, I said, the land loses its commercial value. It becomes worthless to a developer. Exactly, Elaine said. The tax write-off is significant for you, but the market value for Gavin drops to zero. He cannot build his resort. He cannot borrow money against it. I want to do it, I said. I want to give her exactly what she asked for. She asked for the land. I will give her the land. But I will not give her the money she thinks is buried in the dirt. Elaine nodded, pulling a fresh file folder. If we do this, we have to move fast. Before they file for guardianship, we sign tomorrow morning. Prepare the papers, I said, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. And Elaine, prepare a phone call. When it is done, I want to tell them myself. A termination call? Elaine asked. No, I said, picking up my pen. A lesson. The blue light of my phone screen was the only thing illuminating the dark kitchen. I sat there, scrolling through Instagram with a numbness that felt like frostbite. Lila had posted a story an hour ago. It was a black screen with stark white text, accompanied by a sad, acoustic song. It is heartbreaking when you realize the people who should support you are actually the ones holding you back. The text read, Cutting off toxic family is self-care. Breaking cycles narcissist. I watched the reactions roll in. People who had eaten my brownies at school bake sales. People I had known since they were in diapers were tapping the heart button. A friend of hers commented, You are so brave, babe. Do not let anyone dim your light. Another wrote, Boomers just do not get it. In the span of 2 hours, my daughter had reduced 20 years of motherhood to a hashtag. I was no longer a person who had stayed up all night when she had the flu, or the woman who had sold her jewelry to pay for her braces. I was a villain in a carefully curated narrative, filtered to look like victimhood. My phone rang, shattering the silence. It was my cousin Brenda, a woman I had not spoken to in 3 years. "Marianne," Brenda said, her voice high and accusatory. "Lila called me. She was sobbing. She says you are blocking her wedding plans out of spite, honestly. Marianne, after everything that girl has been through, how can you be so selfish? You have that big property all to yourself. Why can't you just sacrifice a little?" Lila had launched a preemptive strike. She had poisoned the well before I even had a chance to drink from it. "Brenda?" I said, my voice flat. "You do not know the half of it. Goodbye." I hung up and turned off the phone. I did not cry. Crying was for people who still had hope that this was a misunderstanding. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a siege. I walked to my home office and turned on the printer. It whirred to life, a mechanical soldier ready for duty. I printed the screenshots of her story. I printed the nasty text messages. I printed the email from Gavin. And then I printed the spreadsheet attachment, the one with the file name Project North Woods. The next morning, I laid them all out on Elaine's desk. "Look at line 42, Elaine said, circling a figure with her red pen. They allocated $5,000 for community relations and reputation management. And here, relocation logistics, $2,000. They budgeted for bad press," I said, staring at the number. They knew kicking a widow out of her home would look bad, so they set aside money to spin it. "It is standard corporate strategy," Elaine said, her face grim. "But applying it to your own mother is sociopathic." When I got home that afternoon, there was a thick envelope in the mailbox. It was from a medical group I did not recognize, located in a suburb 40 minutes away. I tore it open. Inside was a confirmation for an appointment next Tuesday, geriatric cognitive assessment and competency evaluation. I had not booked this appointment. My hands started to shake, rattling the paper. I called Elaine immediately. "They are moving to the next phase," Elaine said, her voice urgent through the speaker. "They are going to claim you are mentally unfit. If you miss that appointment, they will use it as evidence of your confusion. If you go, they have likely paid that doctor to find irregularities. They want to file for emergency guardianship so they can sign the deed on your behalf. They want to lock me away," I whispered, the horror of it gripping my throat. "To get a piece of land. They would lock me away. We need to get ahead of this," Elaine commanded. "Go to your own doctor. Today, get a clean bill of mental health. We need an affidavit of capacity before they file their petition." I drove to Dr. Evans, the family practitioner who had treated my high blood pressure for 15 years. I sat on the crinkly paper of the exam table, answering questions about the date, the president, and counting backward from 100 by sevens. I looked him in the eye, terrified that maybe Lila was right. Maybe I was losing my mind. "Marianne," Dr. Evans said, signing the form with a flourish. "You are as sharp as a tack. I am writing that you are fully oriented, cogent, and capable of making complex financial decisions. Anyone who says otherwise is lying." I walked out of the clinic with the paper clutched to my chest like a shield. That night, The night before, I was scheduled to meet Elaine to sign the conservation easement. I stood by my kitchen window. The rain had stopped, and the moon was illuminating the tree line of the forest that bordered my backyard. The trees stood tall and silent, indifferent to the greed of men. "You want to call my life worthless?" I whispered to the glass, my reflection staring back at me, ghostly and pale. "You want to say I have no value? I will show you exactly where the value is." The morning of the signing, the sky was a hard, brilliant white. It was the kind of cold that snaps in your lungs, clarifying everything. I walked into Elaine's office, carrying the battered metal box in both hands. It felt different today. It no longer felt like a coffin for my memories. It felt like a toolbox. Elaine did not waste time with pleasantries. She spread the documents across her desk, covering the wood surface with a sea of white paper. "This is the conservation easement," Elaine said, her finger tracing the bold header. "Once you sign this, the designation is recorded with the state. It is irrevocable. The land use is restricted strictly to ecological preservation and non-destructive community research. No permanent structures, no commercial logging, no subdivision, and certainly no boutique eco-resorts." I looked at the map attached to the file. The 32 acres were outlined in red. It looked like a heart. "And the ownership?" I asked. "You retain the title," Elaine explained. "But you are stripping the development rights from the title. You own the land, but the land owns its own future. The value for a developer drops to essentially zero because they cannot build on it. It becomes a liability to anyone looking for a profit." I picked up the pen. The heavy black barrel felt warm in my hand. Before I lowered it to the paper, I looked up at Elaine. "There is one more thing," I said. "The liquidity, the cash value from my retirement accounts and the emergency fund I emptied for the wedding." Elaine paused, her pen hovering. "Yes. I want to create a scholarship," I said, my voice steady. "Small grants for women over 50 who have been fired or displaced, for women who were told they were too old to be useful. I want to turn that money into a ladder." Elaine smiled. It was the first time I had seen a genuine smile reach her eyes. "We can add that to the trust structure. It will be part of the same instrument." I began to sign. I signed my full name, Marianne Elizabeth Voss, on page after page. With every stroke of the pen, I felt a physical release. It was as if I was unzipping a heavy suit I had been wearing for years, letting it fall to the floor. The insults, the feeling of being small, the fear of poverty, the sting of Lila calling me worthless, I was signing them all away. The scratch of the pen on the paper was the only sound in the room, loud and rhythmic. When the final page was turned, Elaine placed a separate, thin folder on top of the pile. "And here is the package for Lila." Elaine said, exactly what she asked for. A certified copy of the deed transfer. I looked at the folder. It was technically true. It was a deed transfer. It just transferred the rights into a black hole where she could never reach them. "Send it by courier," I said. "Time it to arrive exactly 1 hour from now." "Consider it done," Elaine said. "Now, do you want to use your cell phone to make the call?" I looked at my cell phone sitting on the edge of the desk. It was vibrating again. The screen lit up with Lila's name, then Gavin's, then a number I did not recognize. They were frantic. They knew the deadline was approaching. I could see the desperation in the rhythm of the buzzing. "No," I said. pushing my cell phone away. I want to use your office landline. I want this call to be official. I want there to be a record that this conversation happened in a law office, not a kitchen. Elaine rotated her desk phone toward me. She punched a button to activate the speaker, then looked at me with a question in her eyes. She is going to scream, Elaine warned. She is going to say terrible things. What do you even want to say to a daughter who tried to have you declared incompetent? I picked up the heavy receiver. The dial tone hummed in my ear, a sound of infinite potential. I only have 4 words for her, I said. Elaine nodded and dialed Lila's number. I listened to the ring. 1, 2. Pick up, I whispered. Come on, pick up. On the 3rd ring, the line clicked open. I took a breath, filling my lungs with the sterile air of the office, and prepared to drop the match. Finally, you decided to pick up the phone. Lila's voice blared through the speaker, sharp and grating. There was no greeting, no concern, just the raw irritation of a supervisor dealing with an insubordinate employee. Do you have any idea how many times I called I was about to send the police to do a wellness check just to annoy you? Is it done? Gavin's voice cut in from the background, distant but audible. Ask her if she sent the PDF. The investors are breathing down my neck. I gripped the plastic handset of the office phone. My knuckles were white, but my voice was as calm as the surface of a frozen lake. I am here, Lila, I said. I am listening. I do not want you to listen, Mum. I want you to sign. Lila snapped. Did you sign the papers? Just tell me yes or no so I can stop stressing. Gavin is losing his mind here. You told me my life was worthless, I said, speaking slowly and clearly. You told me I was just an obstacle standing in the way of your future. You said the only value I had left was in that dirt. So, I decided you were right. I decided to do exactly what you wanted. I removed the obstacle. I could hear the smile in her voice, a smug, triumphant sound. See, was that so hard I knew you would come around? You just needed a little push. Send the scan now. Mrs. Rourke, Elaine said, leaning toward the speakerphone, her voice projecting with the authority of 30 years in contract law. This is Elaine Mercer, legal counsel for Marianne Voss. I am recording this call for legal preservation. The silence on the other end was absolute. It lasted for 2 heartbeats. Who is that? Lila asked, her tone shifting from arrogant to wary. Mum, why do you have a lawyer? This is a family matter. It stopped being a family matter when you scheduled a competency hearing for me behind my back, I said. I do not know what you are talking about. Lila stammered. I have the appointment card. Lila, I said. And I have the budget spreadsheet. Project North Woods. Buyout mother. Minimal cost basis. You budgeted $2,000 to move me out of my own home. You priced my life cheaper than your wedding cake. That is a lie, Lila shrieked, but the pitch of her voice betrayed her. Gavin. She is making things up. But Gavin did not speak. The silence from him was heavier than Lila's screaming. He knew. He knew that if I had the spreadsheet, I had the map. I have sent a courier to your apartment, I continued, watching the tape recorder spin on Elaine's desk. It contains the deed transfer. It is on its way to you right now. Oh, thank God. Lila exhaled, the panic momentarily replaced by relief. Okay. Mum, you really scared me for a second with the lawyer stuff. As long as the deed is signed, We can work everything else out. We can talk about the money later. It is not what you think it is. Lila, I said. What? She sounded breathless. The deed has been altered, I said. Suddenly, there was a scuffling sound on the line, like the phone was being snatched away. Listen to me, Marianne. Gavin's voice came through, loud and threatening. If you encumbered that title with any kind of lien or debt, I will sue you for bad faith. I have partners who do not play games. You are going to sign the clean title, or I will bury you in litigation until you cannot afford a loaf of bread. Elaine leaned in, her eyes locking with mine. She spoke with lethal precision. Mr. Rourke, the title is not encumbered by debt, Elaine said. It is encumbered by an irrevocable conservation easement filed with the state registry as of 9 o'clock this morning. The land is designated for perpetual ecological preservation. It cannot be subdivided. It cannot be developed. It cannot be used for commercial profit. That restriction runs with the land forever, regardless of who owns the deed. No, Gavin choked out. It was a small, strangled sound. You cannot do that. That destroys the valuation. That is the point, Elaine said. Mom. Lila was back, her voice rising to a hysterical wail. Mom, tell her to undo it. You cannot do this to me. We took deposits. We spent the loan money. If we cannot build, we are bankrupt. Mum, please, you have to fix this. I cannot fix it, I said. It is irrevocable. That means it cannot be changed. Not by me, not by you, not by a judge. You ruined us, Lila screamed, the sound distorting through the speaker. You vindictive, hateful. Why would you do this? I am your daughter. You wanted the land, I said, feeling a strange, cold peace settle over me. You have the land. It is yours. You just cannot sell it. I could hear Gavin cursing in the background, the sound of something shattering, perhaps a glass, perhaps his composure. Lila was hyperventilating, her breaths coming in short, jagged gasps. Mom, please, she sobbed, her voice breaking. I am begging you. There has to be a loophole. Just tell me you are joking. I paused. I let the silence stretch out, filling the room, filling the phone line, filling the vast distance between who she was and who I thought she was. I looked at Elaine. Then I looked at the window where the sun was shining on a world that was no longer mine to carry. Now, I said softly, listen to my 4 words. You got your wish, I said into the receiver. Lila's breath hitched on the other end. What do you mean? You wanted the land, I continued, my voice steady. You told me to stop hoarding it. You told me to pass it on to the next generation. So I did. It is yours, Lila. But I also gave the land what it needed, protection. That easement separates the soil from your bank account. You own 32 acres of trees, Lila, and that is all it will ever be. The development rights are gone. You, she sounded choked. You killed the deal. You killed everything. I killed the greed, I corrected her. And that courier package you are about to open, it is not the signed deed you wanted. It is a formal notice. If you or Gavin attempt to contact me again to coerce a signature, or if you file one more paper questioning my mental capacity, I will file for a civil protection order. I have the evidence. Lila, I have the emails. I have the spreadsheet. Mum, please, she whimpered. We need the money, the wedding deposits, the loans. Speaking of deposits, I said, looking at the checkbook on Elaine's desk. The $5,000 I saved for your wedding gift. The money I worked double shifts for it is gone. I transferred it this morning to a scholarship fund for displaced female workers. I do not invest in people who view me as a wallet. You are vindictive, Gavin shouted. You are a crazy old... Be careful, Mr. Rourke. Elaine interjected smoothly. You are on record. Shut up, Gavin screamed. But he was not screaming at me anymore. He was screaming at Lila. You said she was soft. You said she was a pushover. You told me you could handle her? You useless. There was a silence on the line, heavy and terrible. Then I heard Lila sob. It was a different kind of cry than before. It was not the cry of a spoiled child losing a toy. It was the cry of a woman realizing she was sleeping next to a stranger. Gavin, Lila whispered. Don't talk to me like that. I will talk to you however I want. Gavin spat. Without that land, you are just a marketing assistant with debt. Fix this, or we are done. Mom! Lila's voice came through, trembling, stripped of all her pretenses. Mum, did you hear him? He is leaving? You have to help me. Please, undo the easement. Save me. For a moment, the old instinct flared up. The instinct to fix, to soothe, to sacrifice my own comfort to stop her tears. But then I looked at my hands. They were steady. I cannot save you from the man you chose. Lila, I said. And I will not be your cushion anymore. You wanted to be an adult. This is what it looks like. But he is leaving me, she wailed. Then let him go, I said. And if you ever want to speak to me again, you will do it when you are ready to be a daughter, not a debt collector. Until then, all communication goes through Ms. Mercer. I did not wait for her answer. I placed the handset back onto the cradle. The click was soft, but it echoed in the room like a gavel striking a block. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full. It was heavy with peace. For the first time in years, the weight on my chest was gone. I looked out the window. The storm had passed. The clouds were breaking apart, revealing a slice of pale, clean blue sky. The light hit the wet pavement below, making it shine. Marianne, Elaine asked softly, closing the file folder. Are you okay? I stood up and buttoned my coat. I felt taller. I am better than okay, I said. I just took back my name. Thanks for hanging out and listening to this story. I'm curious. Where are you guys tuning in from right now? Are you listening while driving, cooking dinner, or maybe just chilling before bed? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to read your stories. If you enjoyed this one, please smash that subscribe button for Nora Revenge Stories, hit the like, and give it a hype so we can get this story out to more people. Catch you in the next one.